Hello and welcome to Atelier Sandrine Moji. Today I'm going to show you my 3 favorite ceramic palettes for whatever style you're painting in, whatever size of paintings you're doing. I've got 3 different types of palettes that are my go-to, and they pretty much cover everything, whether I paint loose or whether I paint my usual botanical work, whether I paint small works or big paintings. So first I'll tell you a little bit about why I am using ceramic. When you start working on ceramic palettes, there's just no going back. They are so much better than the plastic ones. First, there's the environmental issue. They are more environmentally friendly. They last a lot longer, as long as you don't drop them. And I'm trying generally to not have any plastic in my art practice. So for me, it was an easy decision to go to ceramics. But once I tried using them for the first time, just the way that you mix the paint in them, the way that the pigments merge together, it was a lot better than plastic. And then when the paint dries, you can just re-wet and re-wet and re-wet, and they won't start bubbling or, when it starts flaking on the palette. It doesn't do that on ceramic like it does on plastic. Also, they stay white. The plastic ones get stained after a while, and it's harder to judge what colors you've done because of all that staining. And then when I'm finished with the painting, it just goes in the dishwasher and it's ready to go for the next one. All the palettes I'm going to show you are from a manufacturer called Meeden, and they are my favorite place to go and buy palettes. So let's start with number 1, which is this one, which is the one that I'm using the most. We're going to go to my painting table and I'm going to show you how I use it and why I like it so much. You ready? Let's go. This is the palette that I use the most. This is my go-to palette, my number 1, and in the 3 best palettes that I'm going to show you today, this is my favorite. I use it for most of my paintings. And you can see here I've got a whole pile of them, all the same and all weighted to be called to duty for my next painting. And I have a whole pile of them because I work on several pieces of work at the same time, and it's always nice to have a clean palette available. But you can see by the pile of all the same palette that this is definitely my go-to palette and the one that I use the most. And the reason I like it so much is because there is enough room there for all my colors. I only use about 5 or 6 colors per each painting, and then I do my mixes from that. You can see here, this is an example of where I'm working on a little Black Worcester pear, and I've started doing my washes. And there are enough wells to put all my colors, but also the wells are deep enough for me to use big brushes like this number 12, for example. So it's important to me to have deep wells because I work very wet on wet, and if I use a palette where the wells are shallower, there isn't enough room to mix my colors in those wells. When I work on a smallish painting like the pear and I work from pans, I just take the paint from the pans in my paint box and just add them to this. And if I need a bit more of some paint, I squeeze the paint on the ridges between the wells so I can still use the wells to mix the colors. And you can see on the palettes that are in use with paintings that I've started but not finished, I just use a little bit of masking tape and I write the name of the subject here. So I have a pile of palettes that have a bit of sticky tape like this, and I know which palette belongs to each painting because that's not always obvious. But another reason why I love this palette especially is because of the center wells here. You can see here and here, I always use the center for the same thing, and this is for my shadow color. I mix a bespoke shadow color for every painting that I do, so the mix is always different. For example, for the pear here, it's French ultramarine, Peryl violet, and rich green gold to make this shadow color here. So I mix the shadow color on one side, where I will have a very concentrated version of it, which will be a very dark gray. And then I pick some of that, put it on the other side and add water to it to get a paler version of that mix. And then I'm not confusing the shadow color that I have here with the bright colors on the outside that I will use when I paint the color of the subject. And this makes sense because when you look at a color wheel, you've got the colors around, and in the center, you've got the neutral colors. So it's also logical as well as extremely practical. And this is what makes this palette so invaluable for me. I would truly struggle to work with a different palette now. And this is why I wanted to share it with you. So this is a Meeden palette. I'm showing you on the screen here. This is a screenshot of the palette on the Meeden website. And if you want to order one for yourself to try it out, I have a discount code that I can give you. It's Sandrine10 and you will get 10% off your order of everything on the site, not just this palette. I will put the link in the description box below and in my blog post as well. Palette number 2, which is also a Meeden palette, is the Studio palette. This is a very large palette and it is very heavy. So the first one I would use away from the studio as well when I run a class or a workshop. I use this one for paintings up to about 1 meter in one direction, so even for larger paintings, because the wells are deep enough for that. This one I use when I do color swatches. I do a lot of color swatches, some for teaching in videos, but also to get to know my colors. And this is really good for it because it has lots of wells on the outside as well. I also use it for larger paintings. There is a lot of space here that I use when I do, for example, if I do a red subject that has some undertones of pink or magenta in it, I will put a pink, a magenta and a red, and then I will mix a bit in the middle. I will pick some individual colors to put straight on the wet and wet and let them mix a little bit randomly on the palette. So I have variations in my subject, and these areas are very good for it. And because they're so large, I can do that on quite a big scale. I also have the deep wells all around. And for this one, I usually mix my shadow color in one of the corners. But this is definitely the best palette for doing color swatches because you can have your main color here and then you try it with different colors in all the little wells as you go. This is a screenshot on the Meeden website. This is called the Studio palette and you can use the same code. It will work for this one as well. My third palette is something I use for very large washes. And you can see on here, I'm in the process of painting a very big landscape at the moment. And I've got this big wash here of indigo. And I can use very large brushes with that. But also it has lids. So my washes in there, my big washes will not dry overnight if I paint over several days. So I really like that. And I also used the lids to do some more concentrated washes with different colors. I sometimes use brushes as large as this when I do my landscape. So in a smaller palette, I wouldn't be able to really pick up some of the color. With this, it's big enough to pick up a lot of color and work with very big washes and very watery washes as well, because obviously they're a lot deeper. Here is a screenshot on the Meeden website and the code will work for this one as well. So these are my top 3 best ceramic palettes. I hope they will inspire you to ditch the plastic. And believe me, I promise you, it's so much more pleasant to work with ceramic. The colors keep better, the mixes keep better, it feels soft and smooth, it shows you the true colors, and when I'm done with a palette and I'm finished with the painting, I just pop them in the dishwasher. Thanks for watching the video. If you found this useful, please hit the like button and the subscribe button for more videos to come. And I will see you soon in Atelier Sandrine Maugy. Happy painting! Bye!